So I came across this article. It's 2 years old, so this isn't exactly breaking news. But I thought that it'd be interesting to go through the reasons that this ex-feminist left the social justice cult and see if they stand up to scrutiny now. See if anything's changed. See if it's gotten worse. So the first reason is that social justice advocates a religious-like intolerance for those with whom they disagree, which sometimes manifests itself in unbridled bouts of emotion. Nothing new there, then. Yes, it still does exactly that. But I found this quite interesting. I see increasing numbers of so-called liberals cheering censorship and defending violence as a response to speech. Wow. We're in exactly that place, aren't we now? Speech is violence. Words are violence to the left at this point. We are now at the point where it's okay to assault political opponents. Where literally, was it 4 people now have been arrested for throwing milkshake on someone else? So you're not allowed to do it. It's illegal. But this is something that's completely cheered on by the left. And again, at this point, it's basically the Remainers who are cheering this on. And again, it is a kind of, it's like 1/5 of society are psychotic authoritarian leftists, which is concerning. I see seemingly reasonable people wishing death on others and laughing at escalating suicide and addiction rates of the white working class. I see liberal think pieces written in opposition to expressing empathy or civility in interactions with those whom we disagree. Man, if only you knew how bad it was going to get when you wrote this. I see 63 million Trump voters written off as Nazis who are okay to target with physical violence. Yes, and the left has been consistent about this on both sides of the pond, as it were. I don't see this as being something uncharacteristic of the left. This actually seems to be deeply baked into the character of radical leftists, like the far left. Obviously, the centre lefties think this is awful and you should never do it, but they're not the ones driving the agenda. So, I don't know. I see concepts like equality and justice being used as a mask for resentful, murderous rage. Yes. The mask is definitely slipping as well. The social justice ideology dehumanizes political opponents. Well, this is what makes it cult-like. We're the only real people. How easy is it for ordinary humans to commit atrocious acts? History teaches us it's pretty damn easy when you're blinded to your own hypocrisy. When you believe you are morally superior, when you have dehumanized those you disagree with, you can justify almost anything. In a particularly vocal part of the left, I'm going to say the radical side of it, justification for dehumanizing and committing violence against those on the right has already begun. And now we are at the point where it's okay to be violent to your political opponents. It's not just punch a Nazi, it's punch a right-winger at this point, isn't it? It's milkshake someone who you call far-right, even though that appears to have no consistent definition or any accurate targets. I mean, if Nigel Farage is so milquetoast. I'm sorry, he's not edgy or he's not someone with he's not someone with radical ideas, frankly. The idea that he could be lumped in with Nazis and stuff like that is absurd. And the same for almost everyone else, to be honest. Anyway, we've seen the endgame of such ideologies, or as Smith suggests, cults, which begs the question, is social justice movement really a quasi-religious cult? Yeah, but it's not. The thing, cults can be secular. You can have secular cults, and social justice clearly is one. You have indoctrination, exactly as you say, like indoctrination, religious dogma, demonization of the outsider, a lack of intellectual curiosity, and all you need now is like the dependence on a leader. Well, they've got lots of different leaders, like Ilhan Omar and the cockroach. What's her name? Linda Sarsour. There are lots of these social justice cult leaders. It's the way it works. Anyway, they say the ideology is postmodernist cultural Marxism, and it operates as a secular religion. Correct. Most are indoctrinated in liberal elite colleges, although many are being indoctrinated online these days. Also correct. It has its own dogma and jargon, meant to make you feel like a good person and used to lecture others on their sin. Correct. Check your privilege, much like mansplaining and gaslighting, all one-time useful terms, have over time lost a lot of their meaning. Well, correct, to be honest. And at this point, I mean, they don't even tell you to check your privilege, do they? You know, when was the last time you were told to check your privilege? And SJW hasn't said that to me for years. It's actually amazing now I think about it. I got called a misogynist the other day. I was like, oh, that's quaint. That takes me back to when I gave a shit about what you thought a misogynist was. So, but anyway, Smith is not the first person to argue that there's a religious nature in the movement. NYU psychologist Jonathan Haidt, for one, has described it as an extremely intense, fundamental social justice religion. Well, that's correct. I keep calling back to Arthur Diekman's work on cults on this, because it really does seem like that's the case. You know, questioning the orthodoxy is verboten. Going against the dogma effectively makes you one of them. And so the question is not whether you're with the dogma. The question is, how literally do you take the dogma? And that turns it into a kind of ISIS-like situation where the thing they have to concern themselves about is how much trouble are they actually going to get in. And then you get people like Yvette Falako, who are just like, obviously like full-on cult leaders who found organizations like By Any Means Necessary and actually go out of their way to be sort of these middle-class jihadis, school teachers and things like this, who've got a divinely appointed mission to provide social justice to the world. And you just sat there thinking, Jesus Christ, these people are legitimately scary and actually would be the ones who put the people they thought were Nazis against the wall and just shoot them and think they did nothing wrong. You know, they would honestly do that. And you know that that's the case. You know they would. These are the people in the Soviet Union who would, in Nazi Germany. These were the sort of people who do that sort of thing. Anyway, she finishes with, since shedding the prison of my former ideology, I have a renewed passion for reading and a newfound interest in philosophy, psychology, history, and spirituality. Instead of trying to fix others, these days I try to focus on improving myself, and I can tell you it is much harder, though less futile endeavour. I question myself daily. I try to make a list of a gratitude list daily. So it sounds like she got woke to Jordan Peterson, basically. She probably is a fan of his now, I would guess, 2 years later. Very, very interesting how now she actually gives a damn about other ideas and reading and expanding one's worldview rather than confining it to an even more orthodox and perfect, like she says, prison. Because it does seem like a prison. If you've got a series of ideas that form a coherent ideology, no matter how, awful it is, if it forms a coherent worldview, then you have to literally be able to bend everything to this worldview. And you have to leave or deny or misrepresent anything outside of it. And so, yeah, that does sound like a kind of ideological prison, doesn't it? And so I can completely understand why she would describe it that way. But yeah, I mean, these things have gotten worse, and the violent intolerance of the radical left has become manifest in the past, few years, but that's Antifa. That's not just, that's actual radical revolutionary communists. That's been more than apparent in America and elsewhere for quite some time. But now we're seeing that even the middle class progressives can be radicalized to violence. All you have to do is refuse to apologize, and they go nuts.